Paying like $40,000 for a degree.
Oh, easily, yeah.
You spend 4 years of your life just, absolutely freezing in the Canadian winter.
That is cool.
And then you arrive at graduation only to find out that your diploma is, well, it's functionally invisible to employers.
Right. It's just not recognized.
Exactly. And worse, it's completely useless for your immigration application.
Yeah.
But that is the actual reality for thousands of international students every single year, all because they fell for a glossy marketing brochure.
It's a devastating scenario,
Yeah.
truly. And, it happens because there's this massive information asymmetry in higher education.
Right, because the schools know exactly what they're doing.
Exactly. The institutions know exactly what they're selling. But as a student, sitting thousands of miles away, you're just left trying to decode these completely identical marketing materials.
Yeah, they all have the same pictures, right?
Always. It's always the same photos of smiling students sitting under beautiful oak trees on a sunny day. And they all promise this world-class career. But assuming that higher education is standardized everywhere in the world is a very, very expensive mistake.
Okay, let's unpack this, because avoiding that exact nightmare scenario is the entire mission of today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
So whether you are, just casually browsing schools right now, or maybe you are sitting there holding 3 different acceptance letters trying to decide where to go, we are cutting through the marketing speak today.
You have to.
We are looking at a stack of sources that really break down the hard facts, the actual mechanisms that will dictate your education, your long-term career opportunities, and crucially, your immigration options in Canada.
Because getting an admission letter is, well, it's only the very first step.
Right.
Today is about separating assumptions from evidence. We need to look at how the Canadian system actually functions so we can help you make a decision based on the real long-term value of the credential, not just getting in.
So let's start with the absolute foundation. Before we even look at specific cities or individual programs, you really have to understand the fundamental architecture of Canadian higher education.
Right, the basic structure.
And our sources point out this massive dividing line right at the start. It's public versus private institutions.
Yes.
But wait, I actually have to push back on my own assumptions here for a second. Because depending on where you are listening from in the world, like, say, the US or the UK, a private school usually means it is elite, right? Exclusive, prestigious. I mean, think of the Ivy League.
Right. Oxford, Harvard.
Exactly. So are the sources saying it's like the exact opposite in Canada?
It is pretty much the exact opposite. And that linguistic trap right there catches a lot of international students.
Wow.
Yeah. In the Canadian higher education system, the heavyweights, so the most prestigious, research-intensive, globally recognized universities, they're almost entirely public.
Okay. So public is the gold standard.
Yes. We are talking about places like the University of Toronto, the University of British Columbia, or the University of Alberta.
Right.
And the reason for this really just comes down to incentive structures.
Okay. Because they receive significant government funding. Right. I'm guessing that funding comes with some pretty heavy strings attached.
Massive strings. Provincial governments demand strict accountability.
Right.
They require ruthless academic standards and really extensive research output to justify all those tax dollars.
Because it's public money.
Exactly. And because they are backed by public money, they don't face the sort of desperation of needing to enroll every single applicant just to keep the lights on,
Ah, right. They don't need your tuition just to survive.
Right. They can afford to be highly selective.
Yeah.
Which establishes a very, very high baseline of quality.
So then if we look at the private colleges, the incentive structure is just completely inverted.
Pretty much.
Like, if they aren't getting that steady stream of government money, they rely almost entirely on student tuition.
Entirely on tuition.
And that creates a systemic pressure to just enroll as many students as possible, which the sources note can sometimes lead to, well, relaxed admission requirements and maybe lower academic standards.
Exactly. Private colleges in Canada often operate on a completely different model.
Okay.
Many of them focus heavily on international students specifically, and they usually offer diplomas or certificates rather than full 4-year bachelor's degrees.
Right.
And because the admission standards might be lower, employers know this. They trust the public system.
Because it's vetted.
Yes. If you bring a hiring manager a diploma from a private college they have never heard of, you are facing a really uphill battle to prove the rigor of your education.
Wait, we shouldn't paint with too broad a brush here, though. The source actually says not all private colleges are poor quality, right?
That's true. There are exceptions.
So how does a student tell the difference? Like if I'm looking at a private college, I guess I can't just trust the 99% hiring rate banner flashing on their homepage.
No, absolutely not.
I need to cross-reference that somewhere, like a provincial registry or something.
You need third-party evidence, period. The burden of proof shifts entirely to you.
Wow, okay.
You must do your homework. You have to manually check their accreditation status with the Provincial Ministry of Education.
Yay!
And beyond that, you should verify employer recognition yourself.
How do we even do that?
Go on LinkedIn. Find alumni from that specific private college and see where they are actually working.
Oh, that's smart.
Are they in the field they actually studied?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they working survival jobs? You simply cannot rely on the college's own marketing to tell you their degree is respected.
Okay, so public is generally safer, but knowing you should generally aim for a public university still leaves you with, like, dozens of choices.
Hundreds, really.
Right. So if you're thousands of miles away, how do you instantly identify the heavyweights without having to read 50 different Wikipedia pages?
It's a lot of research.
But the sources actually point out this incredible hack for this. It's a naming convention.
Yes, the name game.
Exactly. Many of the absolute strongest, most established, research-focused universities follow a very specific pattern. It's University of Place.
The University of Place convention is a fantastic shorthand.
Yeah.
When you see names like the University of Calgary, the University of Ottawa, or the University of Manitoba,
Yeah.
you are looking at deeply established institutions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You can actually tell a lot about a school's pedigree just by the formula of its name. It's almost like flagship carrier airlines.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, just like British Airways or Air Canada carries the prestige and the financial backing of their nation, the University of Province, or a major city, carries the historical academic backing of its government.
What's fascinating here is the history behind that exact dynamic.
Right.
Because these institutions were usually founded as the actual flagship academic centers for their respective provinces, sometimes over a century ago.
Wow, so they have deep roots.
Very deep. And because of that history, they possess massive alumni networks, enormous research endowments, and they naturally attract top-tier faculty.
Makes sense.
So when an employer in Dubai or London or New York sees University of Insert Major Canadian City on your resume, it signals immediate, unquestioned credibility.
And the sources also highlight the absolute top-tier global institutions within Canada, the ones known for incredibly competitive admissions.
Yes, the big three.
Right. The University of Toronto, the University of British Columbia, and McGill University.
Those three are consistently ranked among the top universities globally, not just in Canada.
Right.
They operate on the exact same level as the best public Ivies in the U.S. or the Russell Group in the U.K. If your goal is an elite global reputation that opens doors anywhere in the world, that is your target tier.
But of course, prestige comes with the price tag.
Always does.
And this is where the conversation has to shift. Because even if you get into a prestigious flagship school, you still have to physically live there.
Right. You have to exist in that city.
You have to pay rent, buy groceries, take the bus. And Canada is a massive country. The geography of where you choose to study completely rewrites the financial reality of your degree.
Geography impacts your bottom line just as much as the tuition listed on the website. Maybe more.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The sources emphasize that major cities like Toronto and Vancouver are incredibly expensive. You are paying world-class prices for basic daily expenses.
So rent is brutal.
Renting a single room in a shared apartment in downtown Toronto could easily cost double or triple what it would cost in a smaller city.
And meanwhile, the sources specifically point to the prairie provinces, so places like Manitoba and Saskatchewan, as offering much more affordable living.
Significantly more affordable.
But the detail that really caught my eye is Alberta. Alberta has no provincial sales tax.
Yes, that is a huge advantage.
Like over a 4-year degree, when you are buying textbooks, laptops, winter coats, and just everyday items, the lack of a provincial sales tax could literally save you thousands of dollars.
It drastically changes the overall cost of ownership for your degree.
Right. I mean, a 5 to 8% difference on every single purchase over 4 years, that compounds quickly.
Yeah, that adds up.
If you go to a highly respected public university in a more affordable province like Alberta, your overall debt upon graduation might be a fraction of what it would be if you studied in Vancouver. even if the tuition fees looked similar on paper.
Wow. Okay, so there's the financial trade-off,
Hmm.
but there's also an experience trade-off regarding the actual size of the school.
Yes. Big versus small.
The sources map out the differences between large and small universities really well. Choosing a huge university in an expensive city is kind of like going to a massive music festival.
Okay, I like this.
Like, there are endless program options, massive research labs, multiple stages. It's incredibly exciting, right?
Right.
But you might get completely lost in the crowd. You'll probably never actually speak to the lead singer, your professor,
Yeah.
and you will definitely go broke buying water.
That is very accurate. Whereas a smaller school in the prairies might be more like an intimate concert. You actually get to meet the band, but there's only one stage. How should a listener even weigh these trade-offs?
Well, there is no single best choice here. Your analogy is spot on. The mechanisms of how you learn and network at those two types of institutions are totally different.
Okay.
At a large university, the network is vast, but it's largely on you to build it. You might be in a freshman psychology class with like 800 other people.
800. That's intense.
It is. But on the flip side, you have access to specialized research facilities that a smaller school simply cannot afford to build.
Right. Whereas at a smaller university,
At a smaller university, you might have 20 people in that same psychology class.
that's a huge difference.
It changes everything. The professor knows your name. When it comes time to apply for grad school or a job, a highly detailed personal letter of recommendation from a professor who actually mentored you can sometimes be way more valuable than just the generic prestige of a larger school.
So it's about what you need to thrive.
Exactly. You have to look inward and ask yourself what kind of environment will actually allow you to succeed. Because failing out of a prestigious, expensive school just because you felt unsupported is the worst possible outcome.
Oh, man. Yeah. Which perfectly sets up our final and arguably most critical segment,
The long game.
the long game. Because let's be real, after examining the academics, the rent, and the class sizes, the discussion logically arrives at the ultimate goal for so many international students listening right now. What happens after graduation?
Yes. Immigration.
So what does this all mean for the listener whose ultimate goal is to stay in Canada? Because it sounds like choosing a school based purely on immigration rumors is a total trap.
It is a massive trap. For a vast majority of international students, Canadian education is viewed as the primary pathway to Canadian permanent residency.
Right.
But this is exactly where the glossy marketing can become actively dangerous if you do not understand the underlying mechanisms of immigration.
The sources are very clear that there is a specific mechanism you have to secure first. The PGWP, right? The post-graduation work permit.
Yes. The PGWP is the necessary bridge.
Okay.
It is an open work permit that allows you to stay and gain Canadian work experience after you graduate. And that work experience is almost always the absolute prerequisite for applying for permanent residency.
But here is the massive warning sign flashing in the source material. Not all institutions and not all programs are eligible for a post-graduation work permit.
No, they are not. And let's just map out the reality of what happens if you get this wrong.
Okay.
You spend tens of thousands of dollars on a private college diploma, you finish your final exam, you apply for the work permit.
Sounds good so far.
Right. But then the government looks at your application, checks their list of designated learning institutions, and sees your specific program at your specific private college isn't approved for a PGWP.
Oh, no.
And they issue a rejection. Suddenly, your student visa expires in 90 days, you cannot legally work, and you have to leave the country.
Wow.
That is the cliff you can fall off if you don't check the government list beforehand.
And the sources note another major trap here, too. There is a common rumor going around that going to a smaller school in a rural province just guarantees an easier path to permanent residency because, those provinces need people.
I hear that rumor all the time.
But the sources explicitly warn against assuming this.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, education and immigration in Canada are deeply linked. But the rules governing them are highly technical, they are volatile, and they are constantly subject to political shifts.
So it's not a guarantee.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Provincial nominee programs do exist, and they do sometimes favor graduates from their own provinces. However, those programs have strict quotas, they have specific job type requirements, and honestly, the policies can change overnight based on a new government.
So relying on a YouTube comment or the promise of an education recruiter who gets a commission for enrolling you is a terrible strategy.
It is entirely on you to verify. You must go directly to the official Canadian government immigration websites. specifically the IRCC website. You have to verify the facts for yourself today, knowing that you will need to keep monitoring those facts throughout your entire degree.
Because things change.
Exactly. The school's job is to educate you. It is your job to ensure that education actually aligns with the legal reality of Canadian immigration.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's quickly synthesize this down into an Ask the Right Questions checklist for you to use the next time you are looking at a Canadian school's website.
I love a good checklist.
Okay, first, look at the foundation. Is it a public university or a private college?
Crucial first step.
Second, play the name game. Does it have the established history of a university of place?
Yep. Look for that recognition.
Third, look at the total cost of ownership. What is the actual financial reality when you factor in the geography, the rent, and provincial taxes?
Don't just look at tuition.
Fourth, what is the experience trade-off? Are you getting massive networks or direct professor support?
Know what you need to succeed.
And finally, the most critical question. Is this specific program at this specific institution officially eligible for a post-graduation work permit?
That checklist cuts right through the marketing.
Right.
Choosing a university in Canada is fundamentally an exercise in long-term financial planning and career mapping. As our sources state so clearly in their conclusion, well-known public universities generally provide stronger academic recognition, better career opportunities, and much more reliable immigration outcomes.
Yeah.
Make your decisions based on hard evidence and official government registries, not on assumptions.
It really reframes the entire process. And for you listening, we've talked a lot today about doing your own homework and looking past the brochures. But it raises an interesting question for you to mull over as you compare these different schools, building on everything we've just discussed. If a school's marketing materials focus almost entirely on how easy they make the immigration process rather than the rigor, the faculty, and the quality of their academic programs, what does that actually tell you about the true value of their degree in the Canadian job market?
That's the million-dollar question.
Take charge of your research, ask the hard questions, and we will see you on the next Deep Dive.